Hello and welcome on in to Classic Pro Wrestling with the WFIA podcast. I am Chris DeCarlo, the Vice President of the WFIA. Underneath me is the man with class, Mike the Class DiGregorio from Rhode Island. How are you, sir?
I'm great, Chris. How are you guys doing today?
Good, very good. In the corner to my left, as usual, he is the player, the podcast host, the producer, the WFIA board member, Mr. Benny Scala.
That's a lot of slashes. I'm like Cordell Stewart, the guy from the Steelers, slash, quarterback slash general manager slash, bookkeeper. And I wanted to tell everybody, do not adjust your screen there. This is really my shirt.
Very nice. And we are privileged and honored to have this week as our guest, a main event guest indeed. He is a former Georgia Superstars, Memphis, USWA, and more. The one and only Mr. Michael St. John. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. First of all, thank you. I'm in great company. I'm honored to be with you guys. And just for a note, just to want to make this clear, this is Italian. My mother, 100% Sicilian, and it's an honor to be with Faison. And great.
Right.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your time. And of course, through my friend, Mr. Rick Del Santo had you on, and I've been after him ever since to get you. So I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much again for the invitation, guys. And it's a real honor. And I know you guys have quite a following, and I can certainly appreciate that. And thank you for what you do for professional wrestling. It is a wonderful opportunity to promote just an incredible business that has been around for a long, long time. I got my start with Nick Goulas in Nashville back in '77 and '76. I'd done some preliminary work with Jerry Lawler and Jerry Jarrett when they took over Memphis. I was programming a radio station in Memphis, WMPS. They needed an announcer to fill between the time they could get Lance Russell off of his contract at Channel 13 and get him into Channel 5. And the old skinny kid was the guy that got to do that. So that's sort of where I cut my teeth. But it's a real honor and a real pleasure. And again, thank you for what you guys do.
Thank you. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Been living and breathing classic pro wrestling since 1980. I was 5 years old, and I am honored also to be on this show and have this worldwide platform. In fact, which we are live right now on YouTube under the Player Entertainment Network. This show will be downloaded to Spotify within 24 hours. And also, Benny, we are on the radio, right, sir?
Well, we'll be on tomorrow night at 7:05 on Radio WANT. They got what you want.
Awesome. And first, a little WFIA business, if I could. Please go to the WFIA.org, and you can buy like a shirt behind me. We have coffee mugs and other things for sale. Also, of course, we want everybody out there to become a member of the WFIA. It is $50 dues for the calendar year. So if you pay $50 now in September, next September will be due again. You will get a 10% off of anything in the store, off the website, like a t-shirt. And you will get a monthly newsletter via email. And also, we are hoping to have an in-person convention in 2027 for the 60th anniversary of the WFIA. So we want you to please do that. Also, Benny, Mr. St. John, before we start, Benny, if you will, please put up my copyright 107 law. This is copyright 107 law, fair use. We, like Mr. St. John said, we are keeping classic pro wrestling alive through these video clips that are my personal video collection. I do not sell them. I do not rent them. I clip them for the enjoyment of this show each week. And also, we are going to comment on them as well. So with that, Benny, please roll our Mr. St. John clip.
All righty.
Welcome in, wrestling fans. World Championship Wrestling, presenting Georgia Championship Wrestling Superstars. My name is Michael St. John, and I'll be your host today, and it's good to have with me one of the outstanding stars in the wrestling world. I know many of you fans here in the Chattanooga area. Bill Dundee making his
Michael St. John and talk to me now.
Jimmy Cornette and his dynasty.
That's exactly right. He's going to be in Chattanooga, and I'm going to be in Chattanooga, too. And I'm going to bring with me one of the most awesome assemblages of wrestling talents that you've ever seen. Jerry Novak, the bounty hunter, the angel, the man that doesn't care. Carl Fergie, the king of professional wrestling. And Norman Frederick Charles III, the world kangaroo. We're all going to be in Chattanooga.
Wrestling companies. I want to call in promoter Eddie Marlin to give you some information and some background. Hello, Eddie. Good to see you. And boy, I see a happy smile on your face.
Sir, I'm telling you what's right. I know the fans know out there that my job is to bring the best talent available anywhere in the world. And we've been negotiating.
Wrestling. My name is Michael St. John. You know, it's always great to be here. This is the very first and only, the last one left, live wrestling television show in America. And it's great to be here. And today on USWA Championship Wrestling, we have an outstanding card. We have the Dirty White Boy schedule, the Wild Things, Rough.
At ringside, I've been joined by the assassin, a veteran wrestler who has come into MCW, and I want to find out why.
The assassin is renowned worldwide. Anytime.
And think of today, I have a legendary announcer, Michael St. John, with me here today. How are you today, sir?
Rick, I'm very well, and thank you. I am honored to be with you, and I know you got a great following, and a lot of people know your name, and it's just a real honor for me to be with you.
So some classic clips there of you, Mr. St. John.
I've never had a greatest hits album before. That's tremendous. Thank you very much. You guys did a fabulous job. Benny, that's awesome. Thank you. That was very good. I look a lot older now because I am. But back then, to look back and see some of those clips, there's a story behind each one of them. So good stuff. But thank you very much, guys.
Yeah, no problem. In fact, Mike DeClass, you have a question for Mr. St. John?
Yeah, can you tell us about how you were able to, how you made the clip for Hogan in 79.
Yes, sir.
That you were one of the first people to kind of introduce Hulk Hogan to the world.
Yes, sir.
And how that came about.
Well, I was working at the time. I had worked for Nick Goulas, and of course, Nick Goulas and Roy Welch had the territory out of Nashville, had Nashville, Memphis, Louisville, Alabama, Birmingham, Chattanooga, and so forth. And I'd been his announcer. And then when Jerry Jarrett bought Nick out in April of 79 or 78, I guess it was, I was sort of displaced because he had the all-star card. I mean, he had the all-star team with Lance Russell and Dave Brown. In my book, none better. And basically, Jerry said, hey, I want you to do different things with us, and you're going to be my utility infielder, was how he put it. And I started doing voiceovers for several of the wrestling videos. And Jerry Jarrett, I think, was one of the first, if not the first, to use pop music and wrestling videos to promote his stars. And the Hogan video just came about I got a call on a Monday afternoon, I guess it was. I was programming a radio station out in Nashville called Kicks 104, a top 40 station that was quite popular. And he said, I've got a guy coming to the house. He said, if you got a chance, can you come over? Well, I was in Gallatin. He lived in Hendersonville. And I said, sure, I'll come over. So I went over, and I was with his wife, actually. We were standing at his kitchen window there in Indian Lake Forest in Hendersonville, and this nice little small car. It wasn't a Corvette, but a small little sports car pulls up, and this person gets out of it. And I'll never forget it. Deborah Jarrett turned to me and looked at me, and she said, Michael, that's the biggest human being I've ever seen in my life. And he gets out of the car, and Jerry said, just make some notes. And I, found out he's this tall, and he's, what he weighs a little bit. And then a gentleman named Randy West, who put all those videos together, a tremendous videographer, a tremendous cinematographer, put all those together. And they shot that in Jerry Jarrett's ballroom, it was a dining room, actually, with a backlight. And he just asked me to add the video or the audio to the video. So I went back to the station in about a period of 25 minutes. I was able, I did a little needle drop, as back in the days go. You put the production music on the turntable and you drop the needle and you find something you like. And I found some music I like. And it took me all of about 25, 35 minutes to put together, and brought the tape back to Jerry, and they married it, and then it became the video. And the thing I love about it, the best part of the story, is I got paid $25 for that video or for that audio. And people ask me all the time, I said, well, it's been seen 10 million times. It's all over YouTube. So this, that, aren't you a little upset that you never got anything? No, because that's what I did. And every time I got to do one of those, I got $25. So I was totally happy with it. So for it to become the kind of iconic video it did, other than it's my voice, I had nothing to do with what it became, because it became basically the introductory piece to Hogan wherever he went, whether it was Japan, whether it was with the AWA, it was used in the WWE, WWF, it was back then. So it was just, I did the best I could, and I guess some folks may have liked it.
Yeah, well, and before we continue, Benny, I got to send a shout out. Hello to everybody and welcome into our live chat. And you will keep us apprised of that.
Absolutely.
And
got
Benny, I know, Benny, you have a question for Mr. St. John as well.
I got a couple, but the first one, more of a comment that I wanted Mr. St. John to comment on. I do a show on Wednesday nights with Nikita Brezhnikov. He wrote a book called When It Was Real, which goes back, to the glory days of wrestling in the 1970s. And to me, and this is my opinion, and this is I wanted your take on this, the announcer was very integral to me in portraying the authenticity of wrestling. I'll use Gordon Soley as an example. He could commentate on a wrestling match, and he made it sound like the 7th game of the World Series. So I think that was almost just as important to me as what was going on in the ring, how the commentator was describing the action. So I wanted your thoughts on that.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. And I think a lot of the commentating back then was extemporaneous. I mean, today the commentators will have a binder or a book that thick, and then they're going through page by page, and they've got to say this and they've got to say that, and they can't say this and they can't say that. Back then, you met with the promoter or the matchmaker, and you went over the TV format, and it was like, oh, this match, so-and-so's playing this one, and this is, and somewhere in the match mentioned this, and you took a note and put it on the little side of the one-page typewritten sheet. You put a little notice, mention so-and-so, and that was it. And I had a broadcast background, so that was sort of how I, was able to. And I could always BS. So, I mean, that sort of, but it's funny though. And I think you're absolutely right, Benny. I was raised here in Huntsville, Alabama. I left when I was 17, went to Vanderbilt University and swore to God I'd never come back. I've been back here 28 years now after buying a radio station in there and now several. But the thing about it is the market in Huntsville, we didn't have a true TV station. So we had a cable system, which was really a master antenna station when I was growing up. So you had channels 2 through 13 on your TV. And every time you clicked, you got a different station from a different town. Well, it so happened that on Saturday afternoons and Saturday evenings, I could see 4 wrestling matches from 4 different towns, all run by the same promotion. Wow. So I would watch Nashville on Channel 2. I would watch Chattanooga on Channel 12 with Harry Thornton. Nashville had a play-by-play team initially of Smiling Jack Simpson and Gil Green, and Smiling Jack Simpson got his name because he never smiled, and he actually ran an advertising agency, and so I saw them, and I saw Harry Thornton. Harry was a boisterous morning guy on Chattanooga radio and TV. Then on Saturday evenings, I would see Sterling Brewer out of Channel 42 in Birmingham. And then on Channel 13, they would flip between, they were both ABC affiliates, so they'd flip it between Channel 13 in Birmingham and Channel 13 in Memphis. Well, when one had or network programming on, they were in conflict on the satellite, on the cable TV. So they would throw the other one on. So most weeks I'd get to see Lance Russell and Dave Brown from Channel 13 in Memphis. And I sort of got the idea as watching the Nashville show at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and seeing Sterling Brewer at 10:30 at night, or watching Chattanooga at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'd see some of the same wrestlers in Birmingham or in Chattanooga that I would have seen in Nashville. And perhaps one of them would have gotten juice in Nashville earlier, and they'd get to Chattanooga and they had no sign of it, and they do the same match, and you'd see it on Chattanooga, and it was like, oh, this is interesting. So I sort of learned from that, but the commentating back then, and not to get real verbose about it, were very unique. Each individual, Sterling Brewer in Birmingham, Harry Thornton in Chattanooga, Lance Russell and Dave Brown, Jack Simpson, and they all had a different style, and it was all to get wrestling across. And I sort of, that was my learning ground.
Wow, that's awesome. And yeah, go Matthew Rodriguez. Thank you, Mike. Matthew, for tuning in. Michael, can you tell me what happened on Heroes of Wrestling? Are you doing a backstage interview with intoxicated Jake Roberts? What do you remember of this? And did you think Jake was out back then? Out that day? Thanks.
Well, I get to talk about this quite a bit, and it was a one-shot event. I was asked to come down and do all the interviews. I'm in a tuxedo, and we had to be at the meetings to start at 9:00 that Sunday morning. It was a Sunday night show, and we were supposed to get together at 9:00. Then they moved it till 11. Then they moved it to 3. But I think we ended up having the showtime. I think we went on the air at 7:00 Eastern. And I think we had the meeting at like 4:45, almost 5:00. And everything was in flux. Everything was changing. It was like one of those things where you had a lot of different ideas and a lot of great wrestlers and a lot of great minds, but nobody was on the page with, we're going to do this and this is the way it's going to be. And there was always everything was a change. So during that time, Jake probably invested in some alcoholic beverages and other things during the whole period of time. I mean, you got all of Sunday to get rocked. And by the time we came to that interview, bless his heart, he was gone. He was wasted. And the thing that I get commented on all the time, I'm 144 pounds. I'm 6'4". I'm 6 foot even, and 144 pounds. I'm a little guy. Jake is huge. I mean, he's towering over me. And then the entire interview, he's leaning all of his weight. I'm like his crutch. And it was a 3-minute interview, and he was just not coherent. So I'm trying to keep him coherent, but at the same time, I'm trying not to fall over backwards just from being leaned on. And it was a very unique, we did the best we could, but I know it's been shown a million times, and people tell me, well, we feel sorry for you. Well, no use feeling sorry for me, but I was trying to help the man out, and also try to keep the notoriety of the program itself on format and on point. And it was a unique situation. I can tell you that right now. And Jake and I've had an opportunity to talk to him since he's, gotten his life together, and thank goodness. And he doesn't remember a lot about it other than seeing it just like you and I do on tape.
Wow. Well, before we continue, Benny, if you please roll our second clip, please.
Eric out of the way, hooks the leg, and hello, USWA. The cage door opens and the other wrestlers come rushing to the ring. Eric Embry has saved the organization for the USWA. Oh, what a win, an opportunistic win for Eric, and we'll be back.
All right, we're waiting for the bell. There it is, and this match officially underway. Paul Orndorff and Kerry Von Erich. This is going to be a classic confrontation, wrestling fans. You've got two of the best, and they're right now. All right.
And here's Akbar over in front of us.
I see that you've added a little class to your program, Michael Rand.
I had nothing to do with it.
Fabulous Terrence Garvin. Welcome, Terrence.
It's wonderful to see you.
Good to see that you're using your head, Michael Rand.
I had nothing to do with it.
It's wonderful to see him. He looks so good. What a smart man.
Such disrespect.
Calhoun's out of it. Looks like Idol's going for a pile driver on Lawler.
Has the king up. Slams his head down. Calhoun counting a
wrestling match. You think that because you look like Mike Tyson that this is about... The dog has had enough of the...
Look out! Tremendous drop kick from Jeff Jarrett. Look out, Billy's up on the rope. Watch him. Behind you, look out!
Some classic action there over the years, from world class into the USWA and so on and so forth. But we saw there, Mr. St. John, a clip of a young Steve Williams, a.k.a. Stone Cold Steve Austin, and a masked Punisher, The Undertaker, Mr. Mark Calloway.
Absolutely. And talented, you could tell that we're, going to be somewhere somehow big. And, the deal with the show in Memphis in Dallas, when Jerry bought the Von Erichs, is he started sending talent down there and then was sending me down there. And I got to ride a bus every Friday night after the show at the Sportatorium with all the boys going into Memphis to be at Memphis TV by 11 o'clock the next day. We'd ride overnight. Jerry leased Waylon Jennings' tour bus, and we were on that tour bus. And at the end of the Sportatorium matches, the bus would pull around back and the baby faces would get on and would leave. Well, the heels would stay behind and wait for the crowd to dissipate. And I would be I won't call me the babysitter, but technically that's probably what I was. I would be left behind with whoever was left. And then the bus would take the boys to Denny's over on the north side of Dallas, which was about 10, 15 minutes away, drop them off at Denny's. They would eat. They'd have what the heels would want to eat and order it to go. And then the bus would come back, circle back to the Sportatorium, pick up the heels, and take the heels and pick up the baby faces, and then we'd be on the road to Memphis. And 1 week the heels would be left behind, the next week the baby. They alternated it and so forth. And but we'd all be on the bus together, and those bus rides were very interesting. And probably I learned as much as I could stay awake. But because I was part of the Memphis taping the next day, I would go to bed and be back in the bunk. They had me in the very back bunk on the top, and the boys, no matter how rowdy or noisy it would get, they would make sure they had somebody always in charge. Don't F with Michael, because he's got to put us over tomorrow, was what they were saying. Okay. So they never, bothered me. The bus would stop in the middle of the night about 3:30, 4 o'clock in Texarkana. And Tojo Yamamoto, which was a tremendous influence to me during my wrestling announcing days, wouldn't get off the bus because he was old school heel, and he wasn't going to get off the bus and let people know that he was with, a mixture of everybody else. But he always wanted some pork crackling. So I'd go in, use the restroom, maybe get a little snack. I never drank coffee, but maybe got a bottle of water or something to go back to bed, and always would buy pork cracklings. So the boys would always say, "You buying Tojo pork?" Yeah, I'd always get him his cracklings. But the mixture and the camaraderie on those bus trips, and I won't say they ever got wild, but I'm also not going to say that there was never any beer or other embellishments enjoyed by the people on those buses, but on that bus. But there was never any problems. But they were everybody working together towards the common goal, and that was always a neat little behind-the-scenes kind of thing.
Wow, awesome. I know, Mike DeClash, you had another question for Mr. St. John, but he kind of answered it about how he got started in the business, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just amazing because, you're talking about the road trips, and to me, that I could equate that to being in the military when we went on our road trips to the field, and we'd have to go in a convoy. And it's a little different, but it's kind of similar where we'd have to stop off and get snacks and things like that, for the troops. But yeah, that's great. That's a great story, actually. Now, my question is how does the being like a radio host translate to basically being an announcer? I know it's similar, but to make it in that industry, you have to have a certain kind of voice for that. And some guys have it and some don't, but you definitely were one of the guys that did. Did you ever get approached after USWA disbanded by any of the other wrestling organizations like WWF or AWA at that time?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, and thank you for the question. First of all, I appreciate the compliment on my voice. I don't think I have a great voice. And I've always been behind the scenes as a manager and a program director and a general manager. I'm proud of some of my protege. I hired Glenn Beck in Phoenix, Arizona at KOY. Coyote McLeod was my morning man and in Nashville. Steve in DC, which was went national. They were talents that I was able to bring in and hire and work with, and I'm more proud, I guess, of what I do for that or did with that. But I've always one of my passions has always been to do play-by-play, and I've done high school football. I've done some college football. I love doing the play-by-play thing. And my passion is baseball. I mean, if I had to do it over again, I would say, okay, I want to be the baseball announcer for the Cincinnati Reds at some point in my life. And I've always listened to and tried to learn from the people that I think did it the best. To me, you look at guys like Bob Prince in Pittsburgh with the Pirates, the guys in I think Sean McDonough right now is one of the best announcers in football, and he's been the Red Sox announcer before, and he's an awesome talent. And my favorite of all time is Vin Scully. To me, Vince Scully, the Dodger, you can't say Dodger baseball without thinking about Vin Scully. So I've tried to, and not mimic him, but learn from the best. But probably the thing that put me, and this was right between the time that I went to Phoenix to program KOY and Y95, and I met a guy while I was out there named who was the voice of the Green Bay Packers back on black and white TV in the 60s and 70s, a guy named Ray Scott, who you may or may not know. But back then you had one pro game a week on Sunday evening or Sunday afternoon after church. And it would always be it'd either be the Giants, the Bears, or the Packers. And Ray Scott was that voice. And Ray Scott taught me. I had an hour and 45-minute graduate class, if you would, in my office at KOY Radio one afternoon. And I just listened. And he said, it's not always what you say, but it's what or when and how you say it and what you don't say. And he was a master of just a few words and it describing the whole thing. And so I tried to sort of emulate that throughout and try to be colorful. But also remember, the announcer's role back in those days was to get over what people were seeing, to explain what people were seeing so they'd buy a ticket and come to the event. That was the whole game for that. And the thing was, don't get involved. You know, you're the independent guy, but you're the guy telling the story. So that's sort of the one thing that I think Jim Ross is a Hall of Famer. I think him and Lawler were just magic with the WWE. You mentioned Gordon Soley. I think Gordon Soley is Mount Rushmore when it comes to wrestling announcers, no doubt. And there are several others that I'm leaving out. But again, that announcer role was to get over what people were seeing to the point that, hey, I want to go to the arena whatever night and see what's going to come of this. So that's what I tried to do.
Benny, you have another question for Mr. St. John, I know.
Well, I don't know if you ever, Michael, ever seen the movie Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield?
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Well, yeah, this is going to be like when Professor Philip Barbet, the Dean of Business at Grand Lakes University. I have but one question in 37 parts. Now, this is kind of a long-winded thing, but I want to go back to the beginning because I'm a huge fan of success stories. And my understanding is that at the age of 15, you got a job at a grocery store as a bagger. And I guess apparently you impressed the manager of the store so much on your first day that they moved you to cashier. And apparently he also, he liked your work ethic so much. And it's like any job, when somebody is proficient, of course, what happens? You get more work to do, right?
Exactly.
So then they had you make the announcements. And the way that you were initially discovered was, I guess you were doing like a BOGO on Mint Milano cookies on aisle 14. and it just so happened that somebody from radio station WAAY heard you and offered you, I guess, a part-time job. And I mean, the rest, like they say, the rest is history. I guess my point is, you never really know when, you might be working hard thinking it's pointless. And this is kind of like, to me, I just want to hear like you give a life lesson to everybody that you never really know where your hard work is going to lead you. And you're the perfect example of that.
Well, God bless you. I appreciate that. That is the story pretty much in a nutshell. M.D. Smith, who owned Way Radio and Television, Channel 31 here in Huntsville, he and his wife would check out through my line on Fridays and when they did their grocery shopping. And one day, one evening, he heard me go on mic. And I'm not going to lie to you. I wanted to get into I wanted to get into radio. Even when I was a kid, I had my own little radio station in the front bedroom of the house, and you played little radios, and you had a couple of turntables, and you do the whole thing. From about the time I was 13, I'd heard a radio station one night. I was doing homework and was tuning back then on AM. Those AM stations, WABC in New York goes everywhere, and the WBZ in Boston, you could still hear them. And anyway, so there was a station out of Cleveland, Ohio, named called WKYC. And they had a DJ on the air named Jack Armstrong, Big Jack, your leader. And he was, before that or after that, went to Buffalo to KDWP, or to WKBW rather. And I fell in love with what he did. So that was when I was like 12. So I get the job. I'm at the grocery store. It happens. And Mr. Smith is checking out. And he says, was that you making the announcement? I said, yes, sir. He said, have you ever thought about being on the radio and doing a radio show? And I'm like, yes, sir. I would love to do that. And he said, I'm going to write down the name of my manager. He said, Monday after school, just go over to the station. The station was maybe 5 minutes from the Bruno's supermarket that I worked at. Good Italian family, the Bruno's supermarkets. And I can remember my mom picked me up at Huntsville High at 5 minutes to 3, and at 3:05 I was at Way Radio studio, just ready to, and they gave me a part-time job and threw me on the air that following Saturday night at 6:00, and the manager, the program director, was on the air doing a shift, and he said, I'm gonna let you do a couple of breaks. I'm gonna go listen to you, and then we'll talk. I said, okay. So I did a couple of breaks. He comes back in there and he says, I've got some work to do. He said, I'll be back at midnight, just finish the show. And I'm like, okay. And I sounded absolutely horrible. Let me tell you, it was probably the worst radio show in the history of radio. But for some reason, they liked it and they gave me the opportunity. But you mentioned something very important, and that is work ethic. And I was raised, my father's Hungarian, my mother was Italian. I was raised in an Italian family, and everybody whose last name ends in a vowel in Huntsville, Alabama, back in those days was kin to me. So the work ethic came because that was the only thing I knew. And I will be 74 years old in 3 weeks. I have no plans to retire. My son was a football coach for Bobby Bowden at Florida State on the defensive staff for 10 years. Oh, nice. And Coach Bowden used to say, after retirement, there's only one more big event. So I'm trying to keep that big event pushed as far back as I can. So that's why I'm not retiring.
Yeah, well, Mr. St. John, I want to ask you, or if you know, but first a little plug to our friends Adam and Rock Parsons, from the Wrestling Legends Network. They have the rights and the footage to Nick Goulis's Mid-America Wrestling, and great quality. So a shout out to them, Wrestling Legends Network, $3.99 a month on all the streaming platforms, and of course that great footage. But I wanted to ask you, Mr. St. John, do you know or anything about, before that USWA clip that we saw happen with Eric Emery, there's WCCW footage from 89 until the end of 89. Do you know where that is? Who has that? Anything about it?
I know that Jeff Jarrett has several of those tapes. It was a shame back then, in many of the territories. It's not just the Mid-South or the Gulas Welch things, but we would shoot a show, say for instance in Nashville on Wednesday night at the fairgrounds, and we'd shoot an angle. And they'd put that show, they'd cut it down to 42 minutes and 47 seconds. And they would put it on a VCR tape, on a 2-inch VCR tape. And they would dub that tape 5, 6, 8, how many stations were carrying the show. And they would overnight mail it to those stations on Thursday once it was produced. And the stations would run it on Friday or Saturday or Sunday, whenever they ran the show. And by the way, this is my cat. She loves to be on webcasts. So let's do it now, so she will quit bothering me. She wants to be on TV. So anyway, they would send them back in those days, the syndicated shows, the stations would return the tapes. Well, they just record over them, and so much of the history and so many of those great matches were lost because they were. And unless you get somebody that at home was filming it on their VCR or taping it on their VCR, you're not going to see a lot of those originals. And it's sad that so much of the great wrestling history, especially back even to the 60s and 70s, is never to be seen again.
Wow. Yeah, that is terrible. Well, good to know. Benny, another question for Mr. St. John.
Yeah, Michael, it's so good to meet you, and for many reasons. But one is, anytime I meet somebody new in the wrestling business, I ask them this question. The age-old debate about Vince McMahon. People say he made wrestling bigger, but I started watching in 1968. I grew up on Long Island, New York, so I was part of. I was a fan of the WWF, but his dad owned the company then. But my thing is, in 1978, for example, you had 30 territories. So you had, maybe 30 TV shows, you had 30 ring announcers, and you had 30 rosters. And even though the guys who are employed now at the WWF, there's probably double or triple than any one territory back then, but the aggregate number of wrestlers back in the 60s and 70s who made a decent living doing professional wrestling, I think far exceeds what it is now. I mean, now you got some guys who are millionaires, but you had 30 territories, and you could go from territory to territory. And I mean, as an example, I live right near Tampa now. Well, back in the day in the 70s in Tampa, every Tuesday night at the Homer Hesterly, you could see a great show. So, I mean, you could go as a fan of professional wrestling, and it was very affordable. You could go see matches 52 times a year if you wanted, or in Memphis at the Mid-South on Monday nights. Whereas now, wrestling might come to Tampa maybe once a year, and the tickets are like way, way expensive. So do you really think, I mean, maybe to me, Vince McMahon made wrestling bigger, but is it really necessarily better for a true hardcore fan of professional wrestling?
Well, first of all, I think you hit all the strong points, and you're exactly right. And it's great that wrestling has such a massive popularity worldwide now. I love that about it. But back in the day, you're absolutely right. You lived for Monday night at the Mid-South Coliseum. You lived for Tuesday night at the Louisville Gardens. You lived for Wednesday night at the Fairgrounds in Nashville. You lived for Saturday night at Chattanooga City Auditorium, or Monday night at the Boutwell in Birmingham. And then that was part of your culture, if you would, in the culture of the wrestling business. I had the honor in 1992. I was hired in St. Louis, Missouri, to program Hot 97 Radio, WHTK, and a gentleman named Saul Frischling owned it. And I got to know and got to meet. I ate at the same. I'm a big meat and three guys. You meat and threes. I know you guys may or may not know what I'm talking about. Lunchtime, you eat a meat and three vegetables. It's good for you. And so I'm a big meat and three guy, and those are going away, but I'm big on that. So anyway, I was a meat and three guy in Clayton at a restaurant. I'd eat it twice a week. And I noticed there was this older guy over in the corner. Well, one day I asked the waiter, or the lady that was giving me the tea, I see this gentleman every Tuesday here. Oh, that's Sam Munchnick. Whoa, that's Sam Munchnick. So I got to know somebody that knew him and got to meet him and actually have lunch with him a couple of Tuesdays and actually go up to his apartment in Clayton. And which, by the way, God bless and rest his soul. And his son was a fabulous doctor in the St. Louis market. But that was the biggest pack rat place I think I've ever been. He had volumes, boxes, books, of everything he'd ever done. And at one point in time, Sam Munchnick was the Vince McMahon of professional wrestling with the NWA. So, having that opportunity to talk with him, and this again is 92. So a lot of the wave had already started and most of the territories by that time had already folded. And he was still very, very glib and very, very, outspoken. And he too liked the idea that wrestling was becoming more popular worldwide, but he predicted that as big as it got internally it would shrink. And I think to your point, Benny, that's exactly what has happened. So to the point of whether the wrestling is better today than it was now, back then you could get wrestlers. I had an opportunity to work with a wrestler named Gypsy Joe, who was part of the Corsicans, back in the day. He wrestled in 8 different decades.
Wow.
Mae Young wrestled in 7 different decades. Back then, it was all called in the ring. The guys knew how to work, and nobody got hurt. The majority of the time, nobody got hurt. Now, it's practiced, it's worked on, it's not called in the ring, and people are getting, God forbid, getting killed in the business. And that's the part I don't like about it. I don't like the fact that is it better wrestling? Maybe not. I don't think they do as good of a job in this day and time telling the story in the ring that they tell outside the ring. And I think that's why you see 45 minutes of talk before you see the first match on Monday Night Raw. That gripes my backside. I'm one of these. If it says wrestling on the marquee, by God, it ought to be wrestling. It says fun on the marquee. And I'm about this with our staff all the time. If it ain't fun, why are we doing it? It says fun on the marquee. So that's my biggest take. My biggest take is I think Sam Munchnick was correct. As it got bigger, it shrunk. And that's sort of a microcosm of, I think, where we're at.
Yeah. Good.
Wow, indeed. Well, Benny, if you will, put up my ECMC still pick. This is ECMC Transplant out of Western New York here near Buffalo. 716-898-5001 for our good friend, Mrs. Robin Restaino, needs a kidney. Blood types are A negative, A positive, and O. If anybody is out there across this great country, could call this and maybe help her out with a kidney she desperately needs, we would greatly appreciate it. Also, Benny and Mike, why don't you go over our independent wrestler of the week, please?
Sure. Okay, this week's indie wrestler of the week is Erica Demia, and she's the Viral Pro Wrestling Women's champion.
Wow.
And she won her belt on a last woman standing match. So kind of interesting. She seems like an up and comer, and it's good to see that these indie wrestlers getting the publicity because these are the future stars. That's where they're getting them from, the indies, and our indie wrestler of the week, Erica Demia.
Nice.
And not too hard on the eyes either,
Highlighting some green hair there. And why don't you guys continue with our military salute to service this week?
Absolutely. This week's salute to service is Trish Adora, U.S. Army. She spent 8 years in the U.S. Army. She's a freelance performer, but has worked in AEW and Ring of Honor. So she's definitely been in the higher echelons of professional wrestling. Sorry, guys.
That's okay. Very good. Benny, if you will.
Yeah, it's interesting some of the people you find. No, it's interesting some of the people that I'm finding that performed that were in the military, and like I said, 8 years. That's quite a long time. and to transition into being a professional wrestler after that. So
we appreciate them and thank them for their service, of course. Benny, if you will, please put up my PSA of the week. This week, unfortunately, I have to say my wife's cousin passed away on us very young, 40 years old, a few days ago. Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America, the AAFA.org. He unfortunately did pass away from trying to get his inhaler, and he was just found on the floor 2 hours without any oxygen. So unfortunately,
that's a shame.
The parent, they had to bury their son at 40 years old, too young. Sad story, but I wanted to highlight them this week on our show as a shout out for Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America, AAF.org. So as we end here this week with a great guest, Mr. Michael St. John, we appreciate you and your time and being on with us this week.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I've really enjoyed this. You guys do a great job. I mean, I love the way this panel works. You mentioned you were in the Tampa area. My wife is from Haines City.
Okay,
Florida,
not too far.
And in Polk County. And I have a lot of very good friends. The company I was a part of for a great part of my career owned Q105 in Tampa Bay.
All right.
In over near Buffalo, New York. All I can say is I went to Saratoga. I love horse racing. That's my other passion. I love horse racing. And I've been to 54 out of the past 56 Kentucky Derbies. I dragged my wife there. But she has horses, so everything's good. But we made the pilgrimage to Saratoga the year I escaped death from COVID, and I caught it at Tom Pritchard's, Dr. Tom's wrestling camp. I went up there to help train some wrestlers on camera one night and came back with COVID. But thank God I was spared my life, and it was a great miracle. But I love Saratoga, and I love upstate New York is a whole different world, and that's a beautiful area. And of course, I have a Providence story. I was program director at WTIC AM and FM in Hartford, by God, Connecticut. I flipped them from beautiful music with Mike Joseph as our consultant in 1977 to top 40, 96 ticks, 96.5 WTIC. And our sister station was Pro FM in Providence.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so, no Pro FM. Yeah.
So I got to ask you, Boston Red Sox fan, maybe?
No, I'm actually a Yankees fan. I grew up in Western New York where Chris is from.
Oh, okay.
I never. But there's my wife is, so we have some battles. It was misery here for me in 2004.
Yeah,
so,
I can imagine.
Well, trust me.
You have to
my lasting memory of that is I remember going to a park. I had all my Yankees stuff on. We were up 3-0, and that's when it went downhill after that. I stopped wearing. I'm so superstitious. I stopped wearing the sweatshirt.
Well, I'll tell you, that's my other thing. I'm a big, as you probably guys have already realized, I'm a big baseball fan. I have a 6-year-old grandson, and I'm making him a Reds fan because my dad was from Dayton, and I've been a Reds fan before the Big Red Machine and hereafter the Big Red Machine. So
I hope they make it in. Seriously, I hope they catch the Mets. Not a fan of the Mets.
Well, the Mets, in fact, I think the Mets got beat by San Diego today, I believe.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, I believe it was a day game. But, yeah, I hope so, too. There are a bunch of young kids that are playing real hard. But I'll tell you, the greatest thing that happened to me in my life is the fact that the Lord gave me the opportunity to do what I love to do. I've had a wonderful life. And now I'm put on the earth to help my grandson. I'm sorry. You hear my ring?
It's awesome.
The call to post, but to raise my grandson to love and respect sports, because I think once a child, male or female, is into sports, my dad taught me and my sister, you never get into trouble. If you get into sports and love the field of sports, and professional wrestling, folks, and let me say this, I've said it publicly all my life, is a sport. Don't take any BS about anything else. There's a sport to professional wrestling. And if you get into something and you love it and you live for it, you'll never have a bad day in your life. And I really believe that.
Amen.
Well, really
Amen
quick,
to that, yeah.
Really quick, Benny. Mr. St. John, you mentioned WKBW here out of Western New York, Buffalo. That is where the our Buffalo Bills will be playing tonight, even though it's on Amazon Prime. Miami is in town near Orchard Park to take on the Buffalo Bills tonight, live in prime time, and that's where you can see it, WKBW TV. Benny, go ahead.
No, I was going to say 34-17 Buffalo is my prediction. No,
I think that's pretty accurate. I think that's pretty accurate.
Do you remember Joe Nuxhall? I'm sure you do, right?
Oh, absolutely. The youngest pro baseball player signed at 15 years old, left-hander for the Cincinnati Reds.
Yep.
At the Great American Ballpark on the third baseline when you're on I-71 coming down the river in Cincinnati, you look up, there's a great saying, because he would say it after the broadcast when he and Marty Brenneman would sign off. He would say, "This is the old left-hander rounding third and headed for home." And it says on the side of the stadium, huge letters, they light them up at night, "rounding third and headed for home."
15 years old playing major. You got to cut your biology class so you can go pitch for the Reds.
I love that, Benny. Hey, I've really enjoyed this, guys. If you ever want to do it again, God love you. I'd love to be your.
Oh, absolutely.
So please,
absolutely,
thank you very
sir.
much.
We are honored and privileged to meet you and to have you as our guest. And yes, you are a great pro wrestling announcer and being on air radio. And guys, again, we have some great shows coming up in the month of October with some great guests as well. So please, I always say, please watch, like, and subscribe to the Player Entertainment Network here on YouTube. And check us out on Facebook, on Twitter, and also on Spotify. And again, Mr. Michael St. John, we appreciate you, your time, and having you this week.
Very good. Thank you, Michael, for coming on to our show. We really appreciate it.
Again, I'm honored, and God bless all of you, and God bless all the watchers and listeners of this. And you folks, believe it or not, you supporting what these folks are doing makes wrestling even the bigger, the better. And let's take it to a whole new level. God bless you guys. Thank you.
We do try that, and also with the WFIA as well. So, Benny, why don't you take us out of here? Thank you, guys, and good night.
Good night,
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.